Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Saturday, April 18th, 2020, and today we're going to be taking a look at the 2020 Maine Senate election, and this is a very interesting Senate election. We have an incumbent, Susan Collins, a Republican from the state of Maine, who for a very long period of time was extremely popular in this state. She won her re-election bid in 2014 by a pretty substantial margin, actually, if we go ahead and take a look against the Democrat. Even though this was a Republican wave year, we're talking about monumental support for Susan Collins in 2014. She is up for re-election in 2020, and at the start of my YouTube channel, I rated this race as pretty much safe or likely Republican. At this point in time, it has come very, very close down to being a toss-up Senate race. That'll, I guess, loom and will determine the balance of power for the 2020 Senate races. And I think that it is very interesting that this race has all of a sudden come to a close as we progress through. I mean, Susan Collins has just been dropping an approval rating ever since Kavanaugh and a number of other things, which she took the side of President Trump on. Keep in mind, Maine did not vote for President Trump in 2016, so I think that Senator Collins definitely has a fight from Sarah Gideon coming up later this year. But let's go ahead and take a look at, I guess, just looking at what we have currently right now in the state of Maine. So obviously, we have the incumbent senator running for the Republican primary. These were always just thrown out there just because the Republicans may have wanted another candidate. Not ended up being true. The only one that was actually notable would probably have been Paul LePage or Bruce Poliquin, who represented the 2nd District. I actually believe he lost in 2018, but right now, Susan Collins looks like she's on track to become the nominee. Sarah Gideon's the Speaker of the House, Maine of House Representatives, controlled by the Democrats. So, of course, she's going to be the front runner for right now, and it looks like she's polling really well. But the primary has not occurred for statewide races here. But this race has taken a lot of turns. It is now considered a toss-up and a lean Republican state by Politico. And 3 toss-ups from Cook Political Report, Inside Elections, and Sabato Crystal Ball. This is going to be a very interesting election. Now, when we take a look at the polling, well, when it's one-on-one, we have 45% to 42.5% in favor of the Democrat, Sarah Gideon. So based off the polling data, it looks like it will go to the Democrats. You do have to throw in the 3-way race because an independent typically does run. They actually have an independent senator that was up, Angus King, in 2018, won re-election, caucuses with the Democrats. But with that 3-way race from Gravis Marketing, it shows Susan Collins ahead. But at the end of the day, the Real Clear Politics average does show Sarah Gideon ahead based off the most recent polls that weren't taken in 2019, 43% to 42% and 47 to 43%. So I think this is going to be really interesting. So declined to endorse Jared Golden. So that's besides the point. I believe he's a Democrat who just actually came out ahead because of the way that Maine did their voting in 2018. But let's look at the last time Susan Collins won a Senate race in the state of Maine. I mean, this was 2014, and the year before that was 2008. This was a Democratic wave year. I mean, we're talking about the Democrats having nearing 60 seats in the United States Senate at the end of 2008, and in 2002, Susan Collins got 58.4% of the race. In 1996, this was the first time Susan Collins was elected. It was a close race, but she did end up winning against the Democrat, and she has been in ever since. She's been in the United States Senate since 1996, and with over 20 years past, 24 years later, it looks like she's finally going to have a contested race. She never really had a super narrow race. Her first election was close, but it is not going to be anywhere near how close this race is going to be. And if we take a look at 2018, they had a Senate election as well. Angus King was the incumbent independent who caucuses with the Democrats against a Republican, against a Democrat. Obviously, that Democratic vote would have went over to Angus King, so he's still pretty popular. This is by no means the overall average party composition or support for Democrats versus Republicans statewide in the state of Maine. But these 2 senators have been insanely popular. And when I mean insanely popular, Susan Collins was the 2nd most popular senator after 2016. When we take a look at all of this data, Susan Collins rivaled Bernie Sanders in terms of approval. Keep in mind, this was 3 years ago. I mean, when this poll was taken, it was either late 2016 or early 2017 because they hadn't had the Alabama Senate election, and Al Franken is on this list, actually. He's one of the more popular senators, and he did resign his seat, if you're wondering. But Susan Collins, 79% approval rating. only 13% of her constituency disapproved of her. We're talking about monumental support. Of course, the most unpopular senator, Mitch McConnell. Now, the only thing that's changed from then to now is Susan Collins went from number 2 down to 100 in terms of approval rating. Susan Collins is now the most unpopular senator nationwide, from number 2 to number 100 on the rankings of most popular senator nationwide, all over a short 3 to 4 years. So what changed? Well, Susan Collins took the side of Donald Trump in a number of key forms of legislation, and she's always been that bellwether vote because the Democrats have come very close in these recent elections, especially after 2017. The Senate narrowed down to 51 to 49. We're talking about Susan Collins and another Republican, Lisa Murkowski, making all the difference between who's going to actually win a certain vote, and these two are definitely the ones that flip it back and forth between Democratic support and Republican support. And unfortunately for Susan Collins, she did make, I guess, the wrong mistake in terms of her constituents' view, her backing Brett Kavanaugh and a number of other Trump-sponsored legislation, and overall not being as big of a advocate against Donald Trump that the Democrats thought she would be, coming from a Democratic state. That has definitely taken a hit towards her approval. 2016 was by no means a Democrat cakewalk. I mean, we're talking about a narrow margin in previously a solid Democratic state, over 15% margin for Barack Obama, coming down to just around a 3% margin, barely, not even 3% of Hillary Clinton over Donald Trump. But Maine doesn't look like it's going to be as close this election season. I do think that it is going to be very interesting as to who wins this race. 2018 wasn't exactly the best indicator for Republicans, in the state of Maine. The Democrats picked up a seat in the 2nd district. It was narrow. I mean, this is a Republican district. Donald Trump won here by almost 10%, but the Democrats did end up picking it up, and they now have 2 Democratic representatives from the state of Maine compared to one previously, and now we have 2 incumbents running who look like they're polling pretty well, but only time will tell. But Susan Collins by no means is helping the Republicans in this state. Sure, she's going to probably perform better than President Trump, but at the same time, it won't mean much if she ends up losing a 6-year seat. And when we take a look at the fundraising, Sarah Gideon, her opponent, has raised more money than her. No other opponents have outraised Susan Collins. And none of the other races have ever really been competitive besides her first race 24 years ago. She has not had a competitive race in 24 years. And this time, this is the exact reason why I think the Democrats will narrowly edge us out. They narrowly have more money. The polling data does indicate that. There has been a substantial drop in approval. We're talking about from 79% down to 42%, a difference of 37% in support. And when you go from 13% up to 52%, a difference of 39% in terms of disapproval rating. So she is now the only senator nationwide with a majority of her constituency disapproving of her. Not even Mitch McConnell has that. And she has one of the lower approval ratings besides the people that are not too well known within their own state. There's a number of senators with a low approval rating only because they are looking at a constituency that has 28 to 32% of no opinion or does not know who the senator is. Sorry, guys, I think my screen recorder cut out. I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that my microphone is all the way up. Yes, it is. So essentially, just running through everything, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up now. Susan Collins looks like she's on the pathway to defeat. Now, things definitely can change as we hit the race later on. It's nothing is for sure right now. I rated this as a tilt Democratic state the last time I did characterize the state of Maine, but all signs indicate that this race was going to become extremely close. I mean, we're talking about her support dropping when she had 51% to 29%, all of a sudden to now losing to that candidate who looked like they were going to lose by possibly 30% in 2020. And this also has effects on the president. Maine was going to be competitive. Now, with a lot of the coalition behind Joe Biden and with an early wrapped up Democratic primary, there won't be as much division as there was in 2016. And on top of that, we're talking about an increased electorate. When we look at the 2018 turnout and we look at the 2016 turnout, they pretty much rival each other. There's a difference of a couple million votes. But we're talking about previous midterm elections where only, 40 million less voters voted in those midterm elections. So when you look at 2018, it's a strong indicator for a lot of turnout in 2020. A lot of turnout elected 2 Democrats to the House of Representatives in the state of Maine in 2018. A lot of these voters that are angry at certain people. They're angry at Susan Collins. They're angry at Donald Trump. And when you have a combination of a bad senator on the ticket, you have a bad president for the Democrats here, meaning that they are going to use all of that fear and hatred towards the president to turn it into votes down ballot. That second district may no longer be a Republican pickup. It was supposed to be. Looking at the numbers from 2016 and 2018, it looked like it was a 2010 state that could have flipped back if this was a 2012 scenario where the Republican incumbent or where the incumbent president did win re-election. But as of right now, it doesn't look like Maine's going to be too good. But Maine isn't always going to be super important to the Senate. Once a Democrat wins here, I can almost guarantee that we won't be talking about Maine for a pretty long time. We're only talking about it because it has a Republican incumbent, and this is a Democratic state. So Maine is going to pretty much determine, with a number, 3 or 4 other states, who will control the Senate at the end of 2020. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Make sure to comment down which state you want me to do next in terms of the Senate races, and I will see you all tomorrow.